going to talk today about essentially experience and what can we do to have more Flutter projects and introduce Flutter to our companies and introduce Flutter to our clients, and what actually it entails and why we should do that in the first place. Because it's like, why? We built some apps already. There's plenty of other tools. So a bit of a context. Myself, I'm a Flutter developer. I think since last year, I'm a lead Flutter developer at Tab. Before that, I was Android developer officially, and I've changed this. Yeah, so I'm a GTE and a member of Flutter London. So I'm working for a company which essentially builds mobile apps, and mostly we do native apps for lots of clients and build the backends for it and everything. So for us, it was essentially a journey from being native developer mostly to figure out how we can do Flutter. And the first question I had to ask myself was, is it even worth it? Because there's so many other technologies around. How I will justify it? I want to change essentially, how things are produced and built. And is it really actually giving any prospect of being used in the future? And the second thing was that what I need to really know to convince others. Because I won't be developing this myself. So I had to find the arguments and work around to show that this is actually the right thing to do. So if you look around different businesses, different models that actually show up recently, you start to see that there is one interesting pattern. It's the pattern of keeping things in one place. This is Tesla factory picture. So these guys build everything in one place. They don't depend much on anyone else. If they need batteries, they build a factory for their batteries. What it means, they don't really depend. They can move at their own pace. They control the product they're doing from beginning to the very end. This is in contrast with what we've seen before when we had essentially trying to amalgamate as much as possible, reuse everything around. It was good because it was giving our results and stability and potential, sorting the problems with resourcing and other things, but actually not giving you the freedom because you always have to take this one step further to figure out how this works with other parts and other parties. But keeping things in one place is not a new concept. The Ford factory was the first example of it. And on one side, you had the sheets of steel just rolling in the house, and the other side, the automobiles coming out. So, yeah, why we actually look at this? It's because we want to be more productive. As a developers, you probably are productive, and you want to be more, and you don't want to be disturbed by someone else. So if you look at the things that we repeat about Flutter all the time, so the fact that it draws itself using its own UI system, and it has its own toolkit and testing suite, it uses the language which is maintained by the same team, and of course it's open source, it all actually combines into this one thing which takes you to there. You have a freedom. You are not constrained. So if we, developers, have a very serious need of having extension functions in Dart, how long it takes to get them there. Now, if you compare this to any other language which is essentially out there and is maintained by the big community and lots of stakeholders, this process will effectively take longer. So that's the freedom. If you look about another thing which is freedom can give you is the fact that actually you also not depend on the platforms which actually are you will be working on. Despite the fact that Flutter can develop on all these interesting platforms, myself, I tried Docker, it was pretty cool. You don't depend on them. Why? Because you're drawing things by yourself, your interface to interop with this platform is minimal, so this means that actually your code base is all the same all through all this process. So that's another positive, and this is the main difference. If you are approached by the CTO asking you, so what's the difference? Why can I go Ionic? Why can I go and do something in React Native? And I say, because in the end, you depend on the platform you're deploying. In the end, it will be iOS or Android widget or some part of the, or dependency of the browser you're running in. So this is actually the value the Flutter gives you. It's independent. And this is why the Flutter will actually go into more platforms, and more will be on the way, because all it needs is some part of the rendering, frame on which you can actually present the stuff, and that's about it. So, yeah, my favorite topic is when can I get my PlayStation Flutter wrapper? Yeah. So we get there. We are ambient. We are everywhere. We are a platform by its own rights. That's the one thing that you can actually tell to the stakeholders. Our favorite feature, what? Hot reload. Many stakeholders went there, and what's the deal? Right? Okay. It seems like a very interesting thing. Yeah, you can see the changes all the time. But really what it does, it cuts the time you spend learning Flutter. It cuts the time you debugging the problems in the UI. It cuts the time when your designer sees the results of your work on a screen and can interact with you and help you actually correct the mistake. So that's actually what you're getting there for the hot reload. Also, Flutter can actually, just because it starts from ground, it doesn't take an existing SDK paradigm like, the UI we used to have in a browser or UI we used to have in Android and build on top of it. No, because it actually takes the composition very seriously, it allows you to use it to the full extent, which you can't get it in Android in this fashion unless you start to use Jetpack Compose, which actually replicates what Flutter does. So you essentially make it easier to learn it and to have it. So what you will encounter, you will see in the future, is that there will be more companies who can afford to have their mobile teams just because they will be using Flutter. What they'll do, they'll probably take their couple of their web developers they have and tell them, yeah, try this because it's like React anyway. So, yeah, what do you care? And we see examples of this. If you look at the Flutter website, the Abi Studios app, which is featured there, yeah, it was built in a similar fashion. The guys who didn't have any capability, with 2 people, simply build an app. If you would try to build in a native, way, probably will end up with a 10-ish people team to do it. This was done by, if I heard correctly, by 2 people. So it becomes affordable. So startups, here I come, right? Yeah. Yeah, so it's, for developers, it's sometimes a nightmare to actually face this this prospect that I will be talking to very important people I depend on because I want to have a job from them or I want to sell them my code. But at some point you will have to do it. And the thing is that what you need to know about stakeholder is that they care about what they achieve in their business. And this is what they make their decisions based on. So you have to be trying to convince them on something which they understand. They won't understand the hot reload. They will understand that they can resource the project easier because they will essentially quickly train the web developers to do it, right? Another thing is that if you want to show the power of Flutter, you want to do it in a way that actually, outruns the classic development. So you want to do it on a new app which will have essentially a very limited number of native code in it, because otherwise you will diminish your advantage. So you're looking for a new app, and you're looking for someone who trusts you. And this leaves you with a very narrow group of people you can talk to figure out, but these are your best bets, right? The guys you've done something work, you've done some work for them, but they need something new. That's your sweet spot. You can find something else, yes, of course, but this is actually where you're looking for your first Flutter adventure. And to help us, a bit of with translation. So this is my quick translator for stakeholder speak. So you resource easier. It's essentially this thing, because you will spend maximum of 1 month to get someone from 0 to hero in Flutter to do the development code. I'm not saying understanding all the breadth of Dart and lots of things in it. There's Simon Lightfoot for that, and Remy, but I'm talking about someone who just done some JavaScript and now wants to build the mobile apps. It's about a month. It's not 6 months, it's not 12 months, which would be per one platform in a native development. Because you have faster iterations, your app will be more mature. You'll notice that you don't need this like a hard sign-offs for designs agreed with the client, so the developers can start developing. You can start much easier, faster, and then just skin it in a way that actually gives you what you want, because changing how the layout looks like and works like is very easy in Flutter, because it is composable. So that's something which we've encountered, and we're like, wow, this is really working great. We don't need a big hefty sign-off. That's pretty cool. Platform independent, that's something that testers love. Why? Because they don't test Android app on all the version of systems deployed to Samsung S4 or 5, right? Because there are a couple of them. And on each one, Samsung was behaving in a different way. They simply check, does it really render what it's supposed to? And then they check all the other functionalities they have to. If the error occurs in Flutter, probably going to occur everywhere, right, regardless. And that's likely to be blocked. As I mentioned, the Flutter team controls Flutter, not that the Flutter controls what Flutter team can do. This actually allows you to, even if you encounter the bug which actually stops you, it's going to take ages to fix it, just because Flutter team doesn't depend on anyone else to make a move to remove this problem. We literally had a Skia bug on iOS on our dunnhumby project, and it was like reported on Friday, so very inconvenient because it's weekend coming, and it's like, okay, so let's file a bug. Oh, someone did it already. Fine. So let's just thumbs up. Yeah, cool, thumbs up. On Monday we're checking, oh, someone already actually worked it out over the weekend, probably, and merged it on Monday. On Tuesday, the Skia was rolled out to Flutter, and on Wednesday, the problem just disappeared without any work from our side. So how long it would take to fix such a problem on another platform? This is something you can actually show to your stakeholders, and this is what you're actually playing with. It will be much faster and easier for us to move forward because we won't be constrained. Another question you're going to get a lot, who the heck is using it? Yeah, so I've snatched this from Martin. This was, I think, Flutter Tokyo. And yeah, this slide looks much better than it looked 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And what you can see is actually this funnel forming. So initially, you could only look at companies who are interested in making like a very, I would say, generic apps. So mostly Flutter UI, not much integration, got no maps, no things like that. And then you start to actually see things more and more advanced, more interesting. Biometrics, maps, camera, all these things actually coming in. So the funnel is getting and expanding. So you can show this, you can show the slides from the previous years and just say, no, what do you think will be next year? Will you see your company here or not? Yeah, because you don't want to, leave behind the curve. So our first Flutter project, the commercial one, because we've done a couple of samples before, it was, with a client who trusts us a lot, and we trust the client that they don't cancel the project mid-through. And it wasn't easy because we knew from the very beginning there will be a lot of integrations to be done, and it is the first time we're running. So we've decided that, we're going to do our homework. We'll check actually what can we do right now with the current plugins and everything. We spent too much time trying to figure out the right architecture. I think this is what every Flutter developer says, how do I manage my state? Yes. Of course, this is the best topic. And you can never stop. You can always manage it better, isn't it? And then we actually noticed that we bring too much thinking from our old ways of working, and we didn't anticipate this number of things will be in Flutter already, like automated tester try to use Appium to actually test it. Yeah, you can do it, but why would you do it? So there was a couple of these things on the beginning. We were very conservative with our layout for the first team. You can see that this guy downstairs, Antonio, is a designer, very good designer. He designed this app. And so we had just 2 seniors, automation, tester, design, backend. Backend was actually serverless, it was Firebase, and lots of other GCP stuff behind it. And this is how we build it. And on the course of the project, we've said, we have these interns coming, so what are we going to do? Drop them in. And amazing things. These guys were seriously 15 years old, getting some break during the summer, so they're going to code for 5 weeks, and they thought they're going to be just serving coffee, but actually, no, they were coding. And they were doing stories, and they were really amazed how far they can go with it. So learning this thing is not an issue. It's a feature of the framework. And ask anyone who dived into all our frameworks which are out there, how long time they spend on documentation to actually make it run. And we build the app with the backend and all the fuzzy stuff behind it in 4.5 months. So it was cool. And then Agile coach just came to us and the guys, you completely overestimated UI stories. They're just flying through the board. And if something doesn't touch essentially iOS or Android platform directly, it's like almost no time. So you have to take this into consideration next time. The second thing was that, yeah, your automation is out there to use it. Yeah, use it to full extent. You're testing everything from day one. It's not like you're gonna spend 2 weeks setting up your RoboElectric just to be then invalidated in the next release of build tools on Android. Yeah, now it's better because RoboElectric is part of Google, so yeah, cool. But still, I remember fixing this all over. And this increased interaction with designers. This was pretty cool. This was so cool that in one instance we had a sprint. We had a design review with the client. At 3 p.m., client put, yeah, I wanted this one. And by 5 p.m., we had a feature already, PR pushed, automatically tested. We were running Bitrace back then. And this actually makes us think, actually, this sign-offs with the client, it doesn't make any sense, because we can work with designers just sitting on the side and just correcting you how you're going with the stuff. If you're doing something wrong or something doesn't look, iffy. So we've discovered, for example, that when you do Sketch to Zeppelin, I don't know if you are familiar with the tool. Sketch is designed, Zeppelin is like showing you how the design looks like. So essentially when you export there to Zeppelin, it looks pretty fine, but it loses the information about the line height, and when you generate the style for Dart, it actually expands your Flutter design. So designer had a time on a project to sit with the developer and figure out what is the equation that can make it right. So they transform essentially the style automatically instead of manually fixing every time. So this is what you get. And Antonio, I've mentioned before, he described this experience as like, I've noticed increased, how he said it? How do you describe the word when you feel for someone else and you want to essentially, empathy, exactly. Increased empathy on the project because they could afford it. I'll be better engineer because I understand your design problems. I want to try to make the best I can. I'll be better designer, so I will be exporting stuff in a way that you actually work more efficient. Yeah. We still had to run through all the possible, scenarios with the devices. We didn't trust actually our integrations, the first one that we built, and we were actually surprised by some errors that we found. For example, Facebook integration on Android, it's essentially a login page is a final activity and a final class. You cannot extend, you cannot do anything. Okay, I understand that. So again, I'm going to run it on top of my Flutter, and then I'm going to go back when I log in and get everything into Flutter context. But it's all cool as long as you're not running Samsung device. Because on a Samsung device which has a very little RAM, actually system will kill your Flutter app underneath when it runs your Samsung activity on the top. So you have to restore entire context. So these tiny things actually taught us well. So initially try to test it thoroughly, yeah. But yeah, there was a problem with this. We didn't anticipate, and it didn't come out at the first time because you're running everything on your Google Pixel, yes, or even an iPhone, right? And it's all right, and then you actually step on it in somewhere else. So yeah, do this on the beginning, especially when you do with integrations and all these things which are actually specific for the platform. This is where you actually understand. You need to understand what is happening. When it comes to the Dart and Flutter itself, it's not that important. And the number of integrations, that's something that, if you do your, research on a project before then, you do your homework and you're checking, okay, we need integration of this, on this. So you're going into the pub, you just think, okay, there's a biometrics, but it doesn't do this and doesn't do that. When you do this kind of research, then you end up essentially with some backlog of things. You're going to either have to do it yourself or find another plugin. The thing is that more you have to develop on a platform, your project becomes more native. So you're essentially limiting yourself to what your native development is. It's not that you're going to be slower on anything. No, you're going to be essentially same as native. So be prepared for that. So this is why I'm saying greenfields, yeah, the stuff which has a little, stuff in it, and yeah, the trust. And yeah, our second project, there were a couple of others on the way, but actually the one which was actually finished this December was Flutter, is a trading platform. I think the members of the team are somewhere around here, maybe not here, maybe on another meeting. I know they are here. Yeah, so this one was run in a much smaller team because we knew it already that it would be actually possible to do it. And we could accommodate a lot of changes in this project. Our client was, really, I would say, frivolous in terms of changing what they want to achieve, and the subject wasn't that easy then to grasp. So it happened a lot of that. Still, it wasn't actually difficult to get through this. And yeah, and as you can see, this this team was much smaller. The couple of things we've noticed is that at our company we put a lot of effort into accessibility on the apps. There are dedicated teams and advocates for it, how to do it correctly, and people are like showing their rankings on the Play Store and App Store, how much they get for actually supporting this. You have to take a look at it carefully if you want to have it in your Flutter app, because some things are not necessarily obvious. Another thing was that if you do the initial list of integrations you have to develop for your app, it may look scary, but on the second project, we actually ended up with more integration than we anticipated, and it still wasn't that difficult. And one of my developers simply said, if I knew how big this will be when we started, I wouldn't consider not doing this in this way at all. So essentially, as you go, it gets easier and easier. Or it's another integration. It's another, analytics provider that you have to talk to. It's very simple. And of course, yeah, the Flutter team is very responsive. Wow, that's really cool. You never ever subscribe to GitHub notifications for Flutter repository. You should not, unless you want to have your Gmail essentially spammed. I had to clean up mine a couple of times already. And this is what also happened on the second project. The client wanted to actually bring their teams to understand this and actually get this knowledge. And we see more clients coming with this. So if you work in an agency or work in a company which does the software, you're not only starting to do the software, you're becoming a coach in this. You're becoming an advocate. And this is the part of the job. And yeah, my favorite is the web developers are very nice guys and girls. Yeah, they really love it. And yeah, the convincing Android developers like, yeah, why to do that? I have a Jetpack. This is much easier because they know what a React is and they understand the patterns. And yeah, it's very good. Now, this is the coolest part because it's the hardest. So it's very likely, depending on the size of your organization, if you are in a larger organization, it will be much harder to introduce new technology and new stock. And there's a number of reasons for that. The father of disruption theory, Christensens, said that essentially all the companies, they form themselves along the shape of the product they're doing. So in his book, he looked at the, essentially, I think, digital computer, microcomputer, so it's a big, like a wardrobe size of computer. And some technicians say, I can see every department here. Hard drive, processors, memory, everything was there, exactly as a company was formed. And this makes sense. You spend an effort to create this company, to make it great, to adjust actually to the market, adjust to the needs, make it, produce very good quality stuff. And suddenly you want to introduce something completely different? It doesn't even make sense, right? It doesn't make sense. And on a paper, it doesn't. Because if you look at a paper, look at the numbers, you can never prove that you will be more efficient from day one. Or you know your market so well, and investing your time in this new thing will going to bring you benefit. No, it won't. But you don't understand that actually what you're trying to do, it has to be in the future. The future will be checking if you are more efficient or no. And this is why the companies who want to actually go through the cycles of innovation and re-innovate themselves, they do this loop of that. This is what Intel is doing. They jump from memory production to processor and then jump through all the technology and processor every time, essentially in the middle of the biggest growth of the current stack, they essentially branch the new team to do something completely new. And they swap this thing all over. And this is, they could survive for so long until their boss actually retired and they got actually superseded by ARM, right? So what you can do, if you see this actually structure already there, is to essentially have the advocates in every possible place. So you want to have them through the people who design the product, who talk to the client. They have to understand what you're doing. And they become the advocates in their respective field, and they use it. If they take them on the team and they experience it, they're all happy. So that the delivery will be happy because they deliver on time without much effort. The testing will be happy. They had a very nice Friday, not much happened. They just pushed the button and it was released. Cool. So this is the hardest part, is to essentially make these friends around to push it forward. And then it just gets easier and easier, which means you have to start from small things. You cannot go over and, I'm going to just build a massive thing from day one, because no one is going to believe you. The easiest part, this is the release date of Leaky app, the second one we've built. And this is Luca, who is actually, playing with a dog, because actually everything is done. The easiest part is actually use Flutter. And the hardest part is talking about it. So maybe I want to get some questions from you, so I'm start talking. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, come on. All right.
What were some of the difficulties you encountered? Wait. 1, 2, 3. So, what are some of the difficulties you've encountered making these 4 apps?
Yeah, there were plenty of them. One, initially was essentially learning what we try to inherit from the old ways of thinking and building into new apps. So for example, I come from Android background, so this means very strong architecture. So first we thought we have to figure out the right architecture. We spent a lot of time actually figuring it out. And actually, because refactoring here is so easy and composition is so visible everywhere, it's very easy to do this. So with our first app, we've started it doing in a very like a bespoke way of state managing things. And then we end up doing this in, in Redux. And then we ended up actually looking at, can we actually turn it into block? Because block became the thing. So this was one of the things which was like, oh, this was a waste of time actually doing it. The good things, the hard things, initially integrations were like things which were limiting us, and essentially getting used to the fact that you have to take care of them yourself. This was actually difficult. Other than that, I think I would say like teething problems. Like initially we had some problems with automation not starting like iOS simulator on time. So it was essentially failing because it wasn't, when I was running from the CI, essentially it wasn't starting the simulator effectively to test it, and it was failing the test. But that's about the hard things. Maybe, you know, being also used to specific language features, which produced a lot of our requests that we forwarded to the Flutter and Dart team for having extension functions and data functions and null checks and all these things. So they were essentially the learning paths, but it wasn't particularly hard. Maybe because we deliberately chose the project which was we knew we were going to learn, and actually client was learning actually mobile development on this one as well, so they didn't have a comparison, so they didn't pressure us that much. If you have someone who actually, you know, you've built some app for them, the mobile app, and now you want to build a new app, their expectations are set. With these guys, we worked before building their websites and building their internal server capability, but not actually their mobile app. So this was actually in a way, so we didn't actually see this. Other than that, it's difficult to tell. Yeah, it's, yeah. Yeah, I think maybe actually on the beginning, this, with the first company, dunnhumby, for us actually facing this resistance of their internal existing teams to actually learn it, which was kind of a funny story because initially guys kind of, Flutter, what is this? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? And then 2 months later they came to teach me how the Redux should work in Flutter. So this actually proves that actually you have to try it and you become actually in it, you know, you start to like it, and this is what actually it is there. Other than that, it wasn't that much. It was, yeah, very relaxed project with no stress, surprisingly. We were anticipating essentially a lot of you know, blockers, and we were like, maybe because we were bracing essentially for something to happen, it actually didn't happen. Maybe that was the thing.
Yeah, question here. Hi.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Thank you for the talk. You mentioned that integrations with the host were slowing you down. Can you elaborate a little bit on what kind of integrations or what kind of problems you had there?
Yeah, so one integration was on the first project, we were forced to use the third-party scanning library called ScanBot, which had iOS, Android, of course, and React Native, but of course not Flutter. And so you have to use this one. And it was essentially figured out, you know, how to send the stuff from the platform context to the Flutter context, right? So what the library does, it just, when you have a picture, it just cuts it, filters it, transforms, and then sends it a bitmap. There's a couple of ways of doing it. This was actually the most difficult one to do. Others were like analytics ones, which are, you know, it's pretty simple. It's just parse the model, just send it. It's, yeah, it's not a big deal. Yeah, that was, I think, from integration part, this was the hardest thing to think of. There were also, on the second project, there were a couple of things with biometrics not behaving properly on all devices, but we haven't touched it. We just marked this on the GitHub, and it was fixed. So, yeah.
Over here. No, here. All right. How was the process of getting new people into the team? Like, how much knowledge of Flutter did they bring in, or how was the process of integrating them into the team, especially, for example, the interns you were talking about?
Yeah, so for the first project we had, essentially, it was myself acting as a senior Android developer, platform developer, and there was a senior iOS developer, just because we're bracing and how much we're going to actually integrate with. I don't know much Swift. So there was this, and then bringing to the team was essentially whoever you got. They give me anyone. If they can code, that's okay, right? Dart is not a rocket science. It's built to actually be very easily adopted. And we put a couple of people there. Some of them enjoyed it a lot. Some of them less, but they were still productive. So in the terms of resourcing the team, it was one of the easiest to do. Because seriously, you have a massive audience here, right? If you know Kotlin, you're fine. If you know JavaScript, you're fine. If you know Swift, you're also fine. So it's like you actually don't have much requirements. And this actually, the fact that the teams can actually shrink and be quite small, it also introduces this cross-functionality on the team. So at some point we had situations that automation tested and there's nothing to test. Can we do something on the backend? Yeah, go and do it. Yeah, but it wasn't directly in the Flutter. But essentially, if you have a big team, it's harder to actually accommodate this. But if you have a small one, it's actually much easier to have this kind of interaction. So it was very pleasant experience in this respect, and our resourcing team was very grateful for that. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Hello, thank you for your speech. So my question is about native code in your cross-platform application. You've said that it's not the best idea to have many native code in your Flutter application. So what is your attitude to third-party packages which usually have this native code?
So if it's certified package and it actually does what you want, you don't touch it, right? I'm talking about, it does almost what I want, and then it doesn't. So I will give you an example. Tiny gotchas. I have 30 seconds. Tiny gotchas. So permissions, right? Simple thing. You want to have a permissions. There's a nice plugin package which gives you permission on iOS. But by the way it works, it actually mentions all the possible permissions in it. And suddenly we get a pushback from Apple saying, guys, why do you want these permissions? You don't actually mention why you need them. Oh, we don't need your location. No. And actually the plugin was mentioning them, so it was causing. So essentially, if the plugin does what you want, you don't touch it. That's perfect. If it doesn't do, then you have to think and actually create it. And this may actually bring, all the gory thing of system version, support, and things like that, right? So that's actually what the problem is. Once it is there, it's working fine, unless what you expect from for the specific plugin actually changes, and then you have to actually rethink your strategy about it. We essentially use it. We built it ourselves because it was like simple. Instead of cutting it out, it was just, okay, I just need this one permission to store the image. Thank you very much. I don't need your location or your mom's number or anything else. It's really what I really want to have is actually this piece of SD card or whatever memory you have to actually store the image. Thank you very much.